Hello and welcome to another Flower of Light Mystery School podcast. And again, I'm joined by Christine.
Good afternoon.
And Charlotte.
Hello.
So today I just want to talk about, I suppose, the information that would be contained in the mystery schools, or rather the why, for example, the mystery schools were even in existence, if you like. And it was to preserve information. We mentioned before about how originally everything had to be remembered. In other words, nothing was written down. And then at one point in linear time, I suppose we could say, it then had to be written down. And in the mystery schools, of course, in the Egyptian mystery schools, that is, it's Thoth who is accredited with creating the written word or the written language. And that's all written languages, of course. And in a way, when things were put into language, you ran the risk of things being distorted. Sacred information being translated into written language was always going to run the risk of the information being distorted and used for seemingly negative purposes. I say seemingly negative because there is really no negativity, as we'll talk about as we go on. So I suppose you might ask yourself then, if that's the case, why did Thoth create language if language was going to be a medium by which the information could be corrupted? And that's a good question. Even
that
though
you just asked yourself.
That I just asked myself. And so now I'll answer. So the reason for that is because the cycle of ascension and descension, if you like. So in other words, the rise and fall of consciousness on planet Earth, the third dimensional experience, if you want to say. Within that, there is a rise and fall of consciousness. And it's a natural cycle. And so those that, and including the character that I'm calling Thoth, even though Thoth wasn't actually a person, if you like, but that's another podcast.
A symbol or something.
Thoth represents higher consciousness, or crystal consciousness, if you like, or Christ consciousness, higher self, source consciousness. And everybody, if you like, that has achieved that state is Thoth. And his female counterpart, Mat. And so everybody, as I say, who has achieved that higher self consciousness, if you like, would be Mat and Thoth. The male and female combined, if you like. So why then did he put this sacred information into written language, if you like? Well, it was known by the mystery school initiates, by those who had achieved that higher state of consciousness. It was known that consciousness on 3D planet Earth would fall, and so the information had to be preserved. And so it was either don't preserve it at all, or preserve it and run the risk of it being distorted. Yeah, that's the reason language was created, because it was either that or nothing. It was either preserve it and run the risk, or not preserve it at all, because it wasn't going to be remembered.
Starting from scratch.
Exactly. So if language hadn't been created, then the information would never have survived. Now, yes, it was distorted, but nonetheless, it survived.
Yeah, of course.
And that's the point. And we knew that. So yes, there was a risk, but it wasn't really a risk.
Yeah.
Because we knew that the information would become clear at the right time.
Yes.
When consciousness rose again.
Absolutely, because the beings who've created this are immortal, and they've seen this cycle of rise and fall of consciousness, so they know when consciousness falls. And they is us, of course.
Yeah.
And we know when consciousness falls that we forget.
Yes.
So written language was created. And say in Egypt, for example, hieroglyph, the word hieroglyph means sacred script. And so I just wanted to mention that, because I have had people ask me that question before, and questions similar to that. Why, if language created the fall of consciousness? Well, it didn't create the fall of consciousness. Consciousness was falling anyway.
Yeah, because it's a cycle.
Language had to be created to preserve the wisdom. And yes, there was a risk, as we say. but it would not have continued if it hadn't been preserved, because we wouldn't have remembered it.
Yeah.
You see.
People are remembering it now because of the cycle is.
Exactly, and because the language was there to trigger. Now, yes, it was distorted, but it still acts as a trigger.
Yeah,
because
that's
there is
it.
still some truth in there.
Of course.
Well, does it have anything to do with the fact that we have cellular DNA? So within our DNA,
Yeah,
even
of
though we
course.
don't understand it, that's the Akashic records.
It will
anyway.
resonate
Yeah.
with you.
Yeah, you'll remember it when you need to,
Exactly.
or when you can.
Yeah, and when the consciousness begins to rise again, as it is, and we begin to fully awaken again, then all those activations, as you say, DNA activations, which are actually packages of information, become our DNA, if you like, is a self-updating system.
Yes.
I don't like the word system necessarily, but it's a self-updating thing.
Process.
Process, yeah. So what was the information then, let's say, that was so important to preserve, that they ran the risk of putting it in language? Why were they trying to preserve it? Well, what we knew was that once consciousness falls, what happens? We've discussed this before. What happens is that we go out of balance. So from what point are we going out of balance? So this means that in the state of awareness, we are in a neutral state. Yeah, we're balanced, let's say, because that's one of the attributes accredited to Thoth. He is known as Thoth, he who balances, and you see him with the scales in his hand.
Yes.
So,
Like Matt.
and like Matt as well, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the heart that's weighed against the feather of Matt. And if you ever see an image of Maat, spelt M-A-A-T, the Egyptian female counterpart of Thoth, if you ever see, she's shown with wings, angel wings. And that's the feather, a feather from her wing. So, and that's where in more modern, ancient Egyptian art and philosophy, if you like, came before Christianity.
Yes.
So you can see where angels came from, the idea of angels with their wings.
Egyptian.
From Egypt, yeah. And then you can follow that back even further into ancient Ireland, as we've spoke about.
Well, remember that the Olam Fadla would be wearing a cape of feathers and multicolours.
Really?
Yes.
I
You
didn't know that. Sorry.
there's just a sidetrack. In the order of the Druids, it was ranked by colour. The clothing they wore were different colours.
There were different cloaks.
The
Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Well, he had a Technicolor Dreamcoat because he had all the colours. And that's Joseph, one of the 12 sons of Jacob, who became Israel. But that's another whole different story.
But the point is,
but
it
interestingly enough, Joseph is buried in the Valley of the Kings. Yoyasef is his name.
Yeah. And Toya?
Yoya and Toya, yeah.
The granaries, right? Or is that
Joseph's granaries,
I think,
yeah.
yeah.
It's just
In the
on the
Ramsey.
West Bank, yeah.
But my point was that it correlates to the Irish, because the Olam Fadla was the most wise, and he would wear, I did the research on this one, so it was really fascinating. He would have like a feathered cloak of all different colors, black and white in color, because he was the one with all the wisdom.
Yeah.
And isn't it interesting that it's wings?
Yeah.
Like
birds.
a Maori cape. The people in the Maori culture, they have the feather capes.
Oh, wow.
But it was all colors as well. So he represented the one with the highest learning.
Yeah.
Right? And that would be oral learning, not written.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The language,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
That goes back to the language.
And of course, Olam is an Irish word.
Yes.
And Fola is one of the names of Ireland.
Yes.
So there was 3 goddesses. They say Era, Bamba, and Fola.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Yeah. Three
And
gods.
so at one time or another, Ireland was called Era, it was called Bamba, and it was called Fola. So Olam Fola. Olam means the wise one, or the wisest one.
Yeah.
So Olam Fadla is the wisest one of Ireland.
That's it. Yeah.
Or the archdruid, you might say, of
Yeah.
Ireland. So yeah, I mean, in the mystery schools, what was the information that they were preserving? So it must have been really important, in order to kind of create language and go to such lengths.
Yes.
And of course, that's the least of what creating language is one thing. We've spoke about the whole design or the whole pattern of sacred sites all around the world,
Yeah.
and that's another language.
Yeah, it is, of course.
That's a language.
It speaks to your right brain.
Well, that's what I was about to say. So the information that was being held was about time, about the
Yes.
duality. and about what we would call alchemy. And alchemy actually arises from Egypt. Al-Chem is where the word alchemy comes from, and Al-Chem is Chem was an old name for Egypt, the Black Land, because of the soil that
Oh, okay.
When the Nile flooded.
the Nile flooded. Yeah.
Very fertile.
And it's interesting because that Nile soil produces what's known naturally, because this substance can be made man-made, like, but this was actually produced naturally, and still is. I'd hazard a guess it still is. But in ancient times it happened naturally because the soil of the Nile, when it overflows, contains a substance that when the sun hits it at a really high heat, because the sun in Egypt when in the summer is really hot, you know, and it creates naturally occurring orbitally rearranged monatomic elements.
Okay.
Orms, yeah, which is again another whole podcast, but that's to do with the light, how they, you know, that's part of alchemy, you know. They talk about turning lead into gold and things like that, and I mean, for example, how did Egypt is famous for all the gold it had? Everything was made out of gold.
Yes.
Well, where did they get all the gold from?
Yeah.
There's not a huge amount of gold mines all around there, you know, and there's no evidence of them mining all the gold. So where did they get it from? They made it, you know. And they ate gold, and because they created orbitally rearranged monatomic elements using gold. But you can create them using any substance really, and they can naturally occur, which they did in ancient Egypt. And so alchemy, that would be all part of alchemy. They used it to feed their light body, if you like.
Oh, okay.
If you want to kind of do any research on orms in more modern times, because they've made it, it's called white powder gold. If you make it with gold, and made properly, done properly, basically. If there was trials done where people took the white powdered gold, or the orbitally rearranged monatomic elements, and when they took them, they were hooked up to EEGs, you know, to measure their brain patterns, their brain waves.
Oh yeah.
And it happened that when they took the substance, their right and left brain came into perfect balance.
There you go.
And they became basically what would be a savant. They were able to do like incredible mathematical
yes.
You know, problems, solve
equations.
incredible problems and equations, do amazing artwork, play classical music, like without ever being shown how to play an instrument. And then when the substance wore off and they went back to their, you know, unbalanced male-female energy, they couldn't do it anymore.
There you go.
So basically this substance, when taken over a period of time, even when taken once, kind of turns the normal person into a genius. So you can tap into something, you know. But and
that was like the more fallen knowledge, because in the ancient past they would know how to do that energetically, not with using a substance to.
Real alchemy, esoteric alchemy, is inner alchemy, and the inner alchemy requires no external substance at all. Inner alchemy is all, well, it's kind of self-explanatory. It's all inner work, and the alchemy of change and transmutation is all as you transmute yourself. So the inner alchemy, the idea of lead is the unawakened consciousness, and the gold is the awakened consciousness. So turning lead into gold in inner alchemy is about ascension. Is about awakening the lead dense consciousness.
Yes.
And ascending it to the light of the gold.
Which is really your light body, right?
Your light body,
Yeah.
So, so this is the information that was being preserved. So, it's important because who we are as human beings has been we've not been fully allowed to understand who we really are, and the abilities we have, I suppose, if you like, and that's something that's happened over a long period of time. And there you go with the time thing. So the information that would have been preserved would have been about, and I know it sounds simple when you say it at first, but like duality, time, as I said, alchemy, the esoteric alchemy, and a particular process called neutrality or neutralization. So duality is, the idea of duality, once consciousness falls, once it comes into the 3D dense energy, it comes into an an experience that tells it that it has a choice always between this and that, right or wrong, left or right, good or bad, God or the devil, night or day, black or white. That's duality.
It's polar opposites.
So, yeah. So the experience that you enter into when you come into the third dimension is duality. It's a duality experience. And so from a child you're told, and your parents do it all in good faith, and they tell you that's wrong and that's right, you know.
Yeah.
And that's you have to tell a child that, because obviously you don't want a child going up and putting their hand in a fire, or you know. So you know, it's valuable in that way. And to exist in the duality, you have to obviously understand the duality, otherwise you're going to run into problems. But when you want to ascend beyond the duality, which is the information, of course, the mystery schools contained, because at some point in your soul evolution on 3D planet Earth, you will ascend beyond that experience. Now, a lot of people, again, look, there's a billion truths, or actually, for the amount of people on this planet that there are, I mean, I don't know, there's billions of people on the planet. And if there's billions of people on the planet, then there's billions of versions of the truth, isn't that right?
Exactly, because everybody's living their own reality.
Yeah. So the idea is that, is there an absolute truth? Is there, there is no one absolute truth. It's relative, you know. And to one level of consciousness, that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
That, you know, there is no one absolute truth and that it's all relative, because that's kind of like, some people like to feel secure.
Yeah.
And the 3D world and the duality and all of that is a security for a lot of people.
That's it.
And so this type of information can be threatening to some people.
Yeah.
It does that
because it breaks
cognitive
down.
dissonance thing. They
breaks.
freeze up. Sorry, Antoinette, they freeze up.
Yeah. And it breaks down their idea of what reality is. Whereas other people are doing that on purpose.
Yeah.
They want to break down the programming as they would see it. But others don't see it as programming. They see it as their reality, and they cling onto it and they love it. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That's fine, because we've all been there. It's only a matter of your own soul evolution and where you're at yourself.
Yeah.
And so as infinite beings and as immortal beings, which is what we are, we have been here on Earth many times. And we've incarnated and reincarnated for a mission, for a purpose. And some of us have been here many times. And some of us are only coming in now.
Yeah.
You know. And I think those who have been here many times know. They know who they are. And newer souls also know who they are. You know, they're coming in fresher with a, you know.
Yeah.
Older souls are more, you know, they would be
more relaxed about it because they know.
So either way, anyway, the idea that the third dimension on Ascension, like in other words, when Ascension takes place, there's a thinking among the New Age community, if you want to call it that when Ascension takes place, that the third dimension goes away. You know, well, the third dimension isn't going anywhere. Why would it? Do you know what I mean? There's always going to be souls that will require the experience of the third dimension. And even you might require it again sometime, because Ascension doesn't mean you're not going to come back.
Yeah.
You may choose to come back.
A cycle.
Yeah. You may choose to go on, you may choose to come back. There's no judgment either way. And anyway, even if there was judgment, you're the judge.
Yeah.
You know? So, so the third dimension carries on whether you're experiencing it, whether you've risen above it or not.
Yeah.
It will carry on for souls who require it, because there will always be souls who require the teaching of the duality. Of course. Which you did at one time.
Yeah. Everybody's in their own level.
Yeah.
You know, their own growth, soul growth.
So the knowledge of the mystery schools and what I am speaking about today and throughout my series of podcasts is I'm speaking to the people not who are happy and comfortable and safe in the duality. And anyway, they won't be listening to me in any way. So it doesn't matter whether I'm talking to them or not, because they're not hearing me, but
that's it.
And that's fine. They're safe there, and we have no business kind of trying to pull them out of it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? Yeah. And people do that, like, you know, people tend, and they do it in good faith. People who, if you want to say, are working on this way of being, tend to want to take their friends and family and, you know, bring them into their zone. But to be honest, you're not being kind to your friends and family
Yeah.
to do that, because you're trying to pull them into a zone that they're not ready for,
Yeah.
you know, and that causes arguments between you and everything else. And you'll find if you just leave it alone, just be in your own zone. Don't keep trying to pull people in who don't want to listen, because you're only wasting your, not that you really can waste energy, but in a sense, you can tire yourself out in a way
Yes.
if you try to convince people of things that they don't want to know,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you're detracting from like your path
Yeah.
you want to be on.
Yeah. So for those who are working actively on Ascension, which basically, in plain language, Ascension means rising above the duality.
Yeah.
And this is what was contained in the mystery schools. Now, that was a good point you made earlier, Christine, about the female part of us, our female energy, or our female
Yeah.
brain only understanding
Yeah.
images
Yes.
and feelings,
Symbols and feelings and
emotions
colours.
and yeah. So that was a good point, because this is where the geometry plays into it, if you like. The duality is represented by the circle and the straight line.
Yeah.
And you could also say the circle and the straight line represents the wave and the particle.
Yeah.
So the duality experience is, as I said, it's a fall in consciousness, I feel like, because it's imbalanced. In order to be in duality, you're always going to be in one of the extremes of the poles.
Yes.
You're either going to be saying, oh, this is right, or this is wrong.
Yeah.
This is good, or this is bad. And that's okay. But if you want to come out of that, the teaching of the mystery school is about the third way. And this is why the mystery schools was laid out in terms of, people have heard of the Eye of Horus, but the mystery schools, the symbol for the mystery, one of the symbols for the mystery schools was the three eyes. And that was the right eye of Ra, the left eye of Thoth, and the middle eye of Horus. And so to come out of the duality, it's literally a shift in consciousness. Ascension has no physical movement. There is no physical movement in Ascension. It's an internal process that takes place. And it can happen without anybody even in your exterior reality noticing it. It's a purely internal process.
It's like the esoteric alchemy you're
Exactly. Yeah. Inner alchemy.
saying. Inner alchemy.
That's why your intuition is your inner teacher, your inner tutor, if you like. That's your intuition, and your higher self is your inner teacher, and so you should listen to that. That's what everybody needs to listen to. Most importantly now, is your higher self voice, and that's all you should listen to is your higher self voice, because there's a lot of fear being put out.
Yeah.
And anything that you listen to, whether it's on the TV, whether it's on the internet, or in fact anything you're reading, anything. If you're reading or listening to anything or watching anything,
But you're absorbing.
yeah, anything that you're listening to, reading or watching that's causing you to feel fear, it's because it was meant to.
That's right.
It's not by accident that you're feeling fear.
Yes.
So it may be by somebody you like. It may be a talker, a speaker that you like. It may be a movie that you like. It may be a book that you like. Nonetheless, you're feeling fear.
Yeah.
But you see, you'll push your way through it because you like the speaker or you like the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the point is, you're absorbing this fear, you know?
Whether you know it or not.
Well, you will know it because you feel it in your solar plexus. You feel it in your stomach when
Yeah.
you start to feel fear, you know? And say somebody likes a truth teller, that's, you know, there's a lot of truth tellers out there. But as I said, there's billions of versions of the truth.
That's it.
What
Yours.
version do you want to take? Do you want to take somebody else's or your own?
Yeah.
This is all about choice.
Yeah.
It's all about your choice, and your intention, you know. So if you're going to take on board fear, you know, and that's what you're doing, if you want to listen to what other people are saying and it's causing you fear, I'm not saying don't listen to other people. Obviously listen to other people, but what I'm saying is be aware when you're listening
How you're feeling.
how you're feeling. Check your body and ask yourself, is this making me feel fear? Because if it is, just switch it off. Don't listen to it.
Yeah.
Because if it's making you feel fear, it was meant to, and it doesn't matter whether you like the person that's saying it or not.
Yeah. Because the whole thing is...
Just
if
don't
you-
listen to it.
If you feel it and you feel balanced,
Because it's knocking you out of balance, you
that's
see.
it.
Yeah.
And fear is the thing that's going to prevent forward. It always was the thing that was going to prevent forward movement. And that's why, and a lot of people think when they go study the mystery schools, they'll come up against the fear initiations that the initiates would do.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
And a lot of people have said to me anyway personally that, oh, that's barbaric, like the type of thing they used to do, because it was things like, you know, swimming in water with crocodiles, would, you know, things like that. Lying in the sarcophagus in the king's chamber with, you know, in a stone box in a
At
stone
night, no
pyramid
lights.
with loads of weight over you, with a lid on top of the box, with nobody there with you for 3 days and 3 nights, like
Wow.
in the Great Pyramid, no lights.
The final initiation.
I've been there, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's, you know, you would be, you know, and going under the pyramid as well, you know,
Well,
things
yeah.
like that. They were all fear initiations. And, you know, if you don't understand why, then of course it seems barbaric. But because fear will always be the thing that will block your way.
Yes.
And fear gets more subtle and refined as you go along, you
Yeah.
know. It can always catch you, so you always have to be aware, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But there is no fear. There is no, when you are an infinite and eternal being, and that's what everybody needs to keep reminding themselves, because this is the information contained in the mystery schools.
Mm-hmm.
We are infinite and we are eternal. But we're having an experience of a duality.
Yes.
And now it's time for many people, I'm not saying everybody, but for those who are ready, it's time to shift
Yeah.
from duality consciousness to unity consciousness, or if you want to say higher self consciousness, whichever suits you, source consciousness. Because unity consciousness and source consciousness, it's really the same thing, you know.
Mm.
Once you come out of judgment, if you like, you know. So when you're in polarity or duality consciousness,
Yeah.
you're always judging something. You're always saying, this is right, this is wrong, this is good, this is bad,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And you never stop to think that there's actually another way, that you don't have to judge something,
Mm-hmm.
you know. It doesn't have to be one way or the other, you know. So an example, let's say, of unity consciousness thinking is, instead of labeling something good or bad, you just realize that it is what it is.
Yeah.
Mm.
Now, 1 million people, it doesn't matter if the whole world agrees that something is bad. You don't have to also agree.
Right.
If you look at it and you say it's bad, then it will be.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it and say it is what it is, it changes the whole concept, it changes the whole effect
Mm-hmm.
that the thing has on you.
Yes.
You see, things happen in what we call time, okay? Experiences, let's say. And we judge those things either good or bad, yeah? But what if you didn't judge it good or bad?
Mm-hmm.
Would it be good or bad?
No.
It wouldn't.
It's just a thing.
It's just a thing.
It's how you perceive it.
Exactly. It's your perception. So everything that happens in what we call time, let me tell you, life is the mystery school. This is the mystery school.
Yeah.
This is the mystery school. And that's not like metaphorically speaking.
It's literally.
I'm literally telling you, this is the you are in the mystery school.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that happens in your experience is an initiation.
Mm.
And it's how you overcome it. That's what the Book of Coming Forth by Light, aka what the Egyptologists call it, the Book of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Because you see, to the immortal, us here are dead.
Okay.
It's not the other way around. We think we're alive, and those that have gone from this physical world are dead.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when you're in pure energy form, and you are infinite, and you are eternal, and you are everywhere all at the same time, and you remember everything, then those that are physically incarnate do not appear like very animated, alive
Mm-hmm.
things.
Yeah, because we're so dense.
They're
and
in a
we
very
move so
slow,
slowly.
dense experience,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
We're very dense. We're very,
Very
slow.
slow, very dense.
So it appears
Very
like
limited.
we're static.
Very
Yeah,
limited. We spoke about this before in another podcast. When you move down the dimensions, directions, you lose directions of freedom.
Yeah.
Okay? So
Mhm.
we're in a third dimension.
Mm-hmm.
So you can imagine it's not very high up on the freedom scale.
Mm-hmm.
So when you move out of duality, and duality is a whole level of consciousness. And it's your level of consciousness and your perception that creates your reality. So it's important. It's really important because it's what's creating your reality on a second by second basis.
Yeah.
And so Ascension is about coming out of the duality. And that takes constant
Work.
awareness, constant focus on what you're thinking. It takes constant pulling yourself up when you find yourself saying, oh no, that's bad. Or I don't like that.
Yeah.
Or you know, that's hard, that's whatever you come across and you're saying it's this, that or the other. You have to constantly be aware and keep bringing yourself out of that and saying, no, it just is what it is.
Yeah, is you have to constantly be aware of balancing your feelings and thoughts, like not, like you're saying, not going into judgmental.
Yes.
Like
non-judgment.
This is bad, this is good.
Neutrality.
Neutrality.
Divine
exactly.
neutrality, if
yeah.
you like.
Yeah, divine neutrality.
Where you're not actually judging something as good or bad.
Yeah.
You're not putting the label of good or bad on it. You're just saying it is what it is. But in order to do that, it ties into what I was saying earlier about be very careful about what you're listening to.
Yeah.
About what you're listening to on the internet, about the TV, what you're reading, what you're actually allowing into your mind, into your
unconscious,
into your subconscious. Just be very careful because if you find that you're listening to something and it's causing fear, then you need to switch it off. Because anything that's causing fear is not good.
No.
It's end of story. It's very simple. If something is causing you fear, it's not good, you know?
Yeah.
People talk about all like the truth tellers and information coming out and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's all well and good. But to be honest, I see a lot more fear being caused by the truth tellers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, they're the ones that are causing huge amount of fear. Now, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying they have their place and it's good that they're there, you know, telling people. And for those who are in that level of consciousness, then they need that information, if you like.
Yeah.
But there is a level beyond that. There's a level beyond the whole conspiracy theory thing, if you want to say. I'm just putting it, using that phrase.
Yes.
I'm not saying that they're conspiracy. I'm not being derogatory about anything. I'm saying there's a level beyond that level of consciousness. And you see the whole kind of truth teller thing, if you want to say, you know, exposing the lies of government, you know, all this.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into that too much, but all of that is duality. It's all in the duality. It's all keeping you in the duality. Do you know what
because
I mean?
basically they're just
'Cause
saying
you're always
one
going to
side's
be on
better
one
than
side.
the other.
Exactly.
It's not about balance.
You're always going to be on one side or the other.
Yeah.
Even in the whole area of that, you're going to be either saying, oh, this person's, you know, telling or this person. So again, you're just in the... So you actually need to be completely away from all of that.
You need to be vigilant and aware.
And as I said, there's billions of versions of truth on the planet.
Yeah.
Are you going to take somebody else's or your own? In order to establish your own truth, you've got to be in... First of all, you've got to know instead of just believing somebody else.
Right.
You've got to know information that's coming directly from your own inner teacher, not from somebody else. And that's including what I'm saying as well. Anything I say that doesn't resonate, you don't take it on board.
Absolutely.
So the idea of coming out of the duality is part of the Ascension teaching of the mystery schools. And alchemy, of course. And when you start to be ever vigilant about how you're thinking on a constant basis and how you're labeling things, are you telling yourself that this is bad? What if you told yourself that it's good? You know? Like, okay, everybody agrees that, say, for example, having a car accident is bad. But what if you decided it's not as good? What if you put the label of good on it instead of bad? Then you wouldn't go through the suffering that you'd go through if you put the label of bad on it. Do you know what I mean? But, I mean, you actually have to really do it. You have to actually live this is a great experience. Not just pretend. And if you lived, this is a great experience after a car accident, then you wouldn't be going through all that. Even your broken leg, you could be saying, this is a great experience. Because that's what alchemy is. Alchemy is about taking what is seemingly negative energy, and I say seemingly negative energy because there is no negative energy unless you label it so.
Right.
Everything in the experience that we're having is for lessons and for learning.
That's right.
Anything that presents to us in life, in this mystery school that we're in, that we call life, everything that presents that we consider to be bad in our duality thinking, we've labelled it as bad. But if we could stand in neutrality and say, well, it's not good or bad. It's something that's come along to teach me something.
Mm-hmm.
And if I learn the lesson, then I will have progressed.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the thing won't happen again.
Mm-hmm.
Because things only keep repeating if you don't learn the lesson.
Yeah, that's it. Like, if you keep having a problem, it's because you're not looking at the problem.
Yes.
You're basically causing it to happen again because you got to clear it.
Yeah. And as we said, the female aspect of us, what we might call our subconscious as well, understands only images, feelings, emotions. So, and that's another reason why language was created. Because the feminine knows the telepathic language.
Yeah.
But when we go into the fallen consciousness of duality, our masculine energy can't access that anymore. It's not that the feminine loses it.
Because it's always there.
It's the
always
masculine
recording.
part of us that fell, that just can't access that information anymore because we're now out of balance.
Yes.
Yeah,
We're
it's
in our
like
male energy.
when you're asleep, you're in your female energy.
Yeah.
Because your male energy is asleep.
Now, the thing about the feminine energy is it doesn't need to write anything down. It remembers everything.
No,
it
it
is
does.
your feminine energy is your Akashic records.
Yeah.
It is your higher self energy. It is the energy of your heart. It's the energy of love. It's the creator, the source energy. Now, I'm not saying like God is a woman. It's a trinity of energies. It's a
Wait a
male, a
minute,
female, and,
but God,
and a
saying
child.
God as a woman is being in the duality.
Of course it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The creative energy is male, female, and child.
That's right. It's all three together.
It's a triune of energies.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Is that why the ancient Irish always had the triskelon, the
Yeah.
three spirals?
Yeah. And there's other various
Yes.
Yeah.
information embedded in that symbol, but that's one of the pieces of information. Yeah, because symbols holds far more information than the written language.
Then words, yeah.
So the feminine of us, aspect of us, let's say, never disconnected, if you like.
Yeah.
It's the masculine that did. And it's the masculine that fell into the duality consciousness. So it's the masculine of our energy that we're needing to rise up.
To
Yeah.
be in balance with the female again.
To be in balance with the female, exactly. And then once that's achieved, you see, once the male, it's called the alchemical wedding.
Yeah.
Okay.
And once the male and female energy within us is unified in equal 50-50 balance, the child is then born.
Mm-hmm.
And the child, of course, is the light body. The child is the you out of the duality. The child is your higher self. It's your omnidimensional self, your immortal self, if you like. And this is the true teachings of the mystery schools. The mystery schools kept alive the information that we are immortal,
Right.
that there is no such thing as death. We've been sold many lies,
Which is why
and death is one of the biggest lies we've been sold.
Exactly. Well, it's
Because
how
in the mystery schools you
control-
were trained
yeah,
to
to
transition.
confront the fear of death, right?
Yeah, you were trying to confront the fear of what we call death. Because there is a transition, obviously. I mean, we don't deny that we transition, that we leave the body behind and we transition at one point in our experience. That does happen. I'm not denying that. The body does get left behind at one point. But the consciousness doesn't. The consciousness is always coherent.
Yeah.
And your body is your consciousness. You created your body. Your body is a frozen thought.
Yeah.
So what happens when you have no more use of that body is that you just allow the thought to dissipate. You know what I mean? You stop thinking about it, in other words.
Yeah.
That's what happens. But we call it death, you see. But in terms of the mystery schools, there is no death. There's no such thing. We are death. Yeah. Energy is not created or destroyed. It just
Yeah.
changes form. It's first law of thermodynamics.
That's right.
Conservation of energy. Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form. That's a very powerful concept.
Yes. Wow.
So, in order to experience the duality, and when consciousness falls, if you like, it's not just duality consciousness it goes into and goes into out of balance. It also creates a concept of what we call time.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how does that apply to time? Because time is in the third dimension as well.
Yeah. Only in the third dimension.
That's right.
It's only in the third dimension that we experience linear time. And it's only in duality consciousness
Yeah.
that we experience linear time. That's why a lot of people now are experiencing non-time, if you like.
Yes.
A lot of people now
So explain
don't know
that
the
one,
day of the
answer
week.
that non-time.
You know, A lot of people now can't remember what day of the week it is. And it's because of what's happened recently. People's schedules have all been knocked out.
And the structures and...
So, for example, people who would be getting up and going to work every day are now not getting up and going to work every day. So, because their kind of more rigid structure is now more flowing,
Yes.
they're not stuck to time anymore.
Yeah.
And I'm finding people that I'm talking to, just general people like that would normally be able to tell you, oh, it's Monday, Tuesday, what date, blah, 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 you know, are saying, God, I don't even know the day of the week anymore. And again, not getting into it too much, but the most recent things that have happened, the same thing applies to all of these things. We are alchemists. And alchemists turn seeming negative energy into positive energy.
That's right.
That's what alchemists do. I say seeming because there is no negative energy, only if you decide it's negative.
Yeah.
If you decide it's positive, then that's what will happen. And in the higher energies as we're in now, as the energy is rising now,
Right.
negative energy cannot exist unless you allow it. Can't. It can't. Because
Yeah.
what you do as an alchemist is you transmute it.
Yeah.
You continually transmute it. Therefore, it can't exist. It takes your participation.
Yeah.
It takes your consent. It takes you to acknowledge and consent for it to actually work. You know?
Yeah.
So unless you label it as negative energy, then it's not. And if you can say anything that is coming at you that you could potentially label as negative, but you're not going to.
Right.
You're going to say, okay, how do I turn this into positive?
Yeah.
And you'll find that you will.
Yeah.
You will. Because what you focus on is what you get.
That's
right.
it.
Because the secret of this universe is, and it's so simple. It's so simple. I think for most people it's too simple, in fact.
That's it.
That they just pass it by.
Yeah.
But the secret is that what you think is what you create.
That's right.
No, I'm not saying that every fleeting thought that comes through your mind, of course not. Because we're clever enough to have a safety defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And our safety defense mechanism is called time.
That's right.
And I'll tell you how. Because would you like it if everybody here could think of something and for it to be instantly manifest? No, I don't mean everybody in this room. I mean everybody on the planet. No. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So we would not like that, would we? Because you can imagine there's many people on the planet that I would not like to see what they're thinking become manifest.
No, same here.
You know what I mean? So we are clever. We built in a safety defense mechanism called time. Now, time exists only for the duality consciousness, for the third dimensional consciousness, for the destructive consciousness, to be honest with you. I'm not saying everybody in the third dimension is destructive. I'm not saying duality consciousness itself is destructive. It's out of balance. So therefore it's self-explanatory. It's out of balance.
But it still has place in the...
But it does run a high risk of being destructive, yeah. It's technology is explosion technology, not implosion technology. It's explosion technology. It's destructive. If you think of this like archaeology and all that, they're all destructive technologies, you know.
Yes.
Combustion engines.
Yeah, I was just thinking of car engines myself.
They're polluting and destructive, you know.
Ship engines,
Higher-
car engines.
Yeah. Higher technology is non-polluting.
Yeah.
Higher technology actually creates energy. Its usage creates energy. It doesn't use energy.
Yes.
It doesn't deplete anything. It doesn't pollute anything. And it's in infinite supply. Because you're tapping into the source energy.
Sort of like 0 point energy and all
Rather
that.
than explosion energy, you know. And this is what, in the mystery schools, they had highly advanced information. You see, we've been sold many lies, you know. And we've been told that progression happened in a linear process.
But that's
From-
distortion, right?
Of course, from really primitive people all the way up to us fantastic civilized people. And a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, John Anthony West, who many people might know, he was very famous for writing a couple of books, one of them The Traveller's Guide to Egypt, and the other one Serpent in the Sky, and also most famous for pointing out Schwaller de Lubit's observation that the Sphinx was worn by water and not sand and wind erosion. But anyway, he used to say, we think we're so civilized with our hydrogen bombs and striped toothpaste. which is, kind of says it all, really, That's not civilization. And wires hanging out everywhere, and antennas everywhere, and telephone masts. That's not technology.
Well, it goes for me to the
There's no wires in technology.
No, it's thoughts,
Yeah,
consciousness. I mean, Nikola Tesla had an electric car and the Wardenclyffe Tower for wireless energy at the turn of the century, 1890,
late
1900s.
yeah.
But because J.P. Morgan wanted everyone to have a utility bill, he wanted houses full of copper wires.
And he was in cooperation with somebody, or in partnership with somebody who owned a copper mine.
Yes, exactly.
So that's why we have electricity run through copper wires.
Yeah, it's because J.P. Morgan wanted to charge.
But Nikola Tesla, of course, said he rediscovered the information of the pyramid builders.
That's right.
But anyway, which brings me to a point of the orms that I mentioned earlier, the orbitally rearranged. One of the properties of the orm elements is that they have anti-gravity, zero gravity, levitation properties. Yeah.
Yes.
And anything they come in contact with will levitate as well. Anything it comes in contact with, rather. So time, time was created to for the idea of keeping what we consider events separate, if you like. So,
yesterday, today, tomorrow, because otherwise, if everything happened at once, that, and in fact, no time, everything happening at once is the higher consciousness. So the lower consciousness can't cope with that, right? I mean,
Exactly.
That's basically when you're in your female energy and everything's connecting, everything's flowing, it's all happening at once. Like, I don't have to read the Akashic records; it's happening right now.
Everything is now.
So
if you can, go. Sorry.
No, that's what I mean. Like, it's probably time is to facilitate the lower energy.
Oh yeah.
Time
is a mental construct of
That's it, yeah.
of the fallen consciousness, if you like.
Yes.
And so, time is to keep everything separate.
Yes.
To keep events separate, if you like. So when working with coming out of the duality, in other words, how you do that, as I said before, is to not label things good or bad. Don't judge things. Don't say this is bad, this is good, this is that, this is the other. Just everything is what it is.
Try to be neutral.
Be neutral. And everything is presented to you for your benefit.
If you perceive it that way.
If you perceive it that way.
Yeah.
If you want to perceive it as something bad, then you can. But if you see it as truth, the way it is that it just is what it is. It's not good or bad.
Yeah.
Energy is neutral. It's not good or bad. I mean, if we're talking about positive and negative and neutral in terms of electricity, can you read? It's like saying your right hand is better than your left hand.
Yeah, exactly. Choosing sides.
Do you know what I mean? Like, it's crazy to think something is good or bad. It's not. It works in cooperation. Because this is an
balance.
experience that we've created for ourselves. We're not going to present ourselves with anything we can't deal with.
That's it.
And everything that's presented to us is a catalyst. It's to wake us up.
That's it, yeah.
It's so that we make changes that we needed to make, but that we weren't making.
Yes.
Now, the thing is, if you go into fear, what happens is you shut yourself down.
That's right. So there's no progression.
If you can rise above the fear, then you can keep rising up on that ascension cycle. And coming out of the duality, not labeling things as good or bad, being an alchemist and transmuting all energy that might appear to be negative at first, transmuting it into positive energy, will bring you out of the fear.
Yeah.
Because the only time you have fear is when you don't feel you're in control of anything, or
if you're
fear
at
of
the
the
mercy
unknown,
of something.
if you like.
Yeah, the
That's
unknown.
it.
Yeah.
fear of the unknown.
That's it.
So another thing that was created that I talk about and that Thoth is accredited to, and of course Thoth was known as the master of the mystery schools. That's why I talk about him quite a bit and why he's important. Well, as I said, it's not a person. Thoth is not a person. Thoth represents the higher consciousness of
Aspect to
Yes,
nature.
it's not a literal symbol
every ascended being,
or a person.
He represents the male energy of that, and Matt represents the female, as I said. So also Thoth is credited with the creation of calendars. So we'll say calendars is the creation of time, or the perception of time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So time is not a tangible thing. Time is intangible. It's a mental construct. It's not a tangible thing. And our idea of time, if you think about it, most people don't think about what is time. The question, what time is it, is asked
A lot.
Yeah.
An
But
awful
what
lot.
is time?
But what is time is not necessarily asked that often. And if we want to think about what time is the amount of times our planet goes around. Another way of looking at
It's
time.
a cycle.
Yeah. We count the amount of times the Earth goes around the sun. 365 and a quarter days, we call that a year. Yeah. So that's another version of how we count time, how calendars were created. So why are we doing that? Why are we counting the amount of time that the planet goes around the sun? Because it goes around infinitely.
Mm-hmm.
It's an infinite cycle.
Yeah.
It does it all the time. All the time. It does it all the now.
All the now, yeah.
So why are we counting it? You see. So,
Do you think, what's your perception of why we count?
well, that's the fallen consciousness.
Yeah.
So there was many ways that, as I said, the information is preserved in almost the thing that destroyed it, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Like the answer's in the problem,
It's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
you know? Like we were smart enough to do that. We embedded the information in the problem,
Yeah.
you know?
There you go.
So the information is in our writing and it's in our concept of time. And we only figure it out as we start to rise above the duality. You
Yeah.
see? And then we go, oh yeah.
Yeah, because when you're
that was
in
clever. That was
when
clever.
you're in the
Smart.
duality, you are subject to it.
Of course, yeah.
So you have no higher perspective
Exactly.
that you can see it
Yeah.
from above rather than when you're within it,
Yeah.
you're just swimming in it. It's like
Yeah,
It's
it's like
controlling
standing on
you.
a height and looking down on
Yeah,
something.
exactly.
You have a better perspective.
yeah.
So time was created by the introduction of calendars, which
Yeah.
of course again in Egypt, for example, Thoth was credited with the creation of calendars and therefore the concept of time. And that's embedded in a lot of the mythology, you know. There's a whole story about Thoth playing dice with the moon and winning a 72nd part of the light of the moon, or the sun rather, and giving it to the moon. And it's about how the extra 5 and a quarter days were created. It's embedded in a lot of the mythologies, in all of the mythologies, in fact, of the stories you hear in ancient Egypt about Osiris and Isis and all of that. Because there was a now when there was no calendars. An eternal now. Because if you stop thinking in terms of time and start thinking in terms of eternal now, then the whole concept shifts. We think in very small increments of time.
Because of
We
our
think-
small lifespans.
Yes, well, that's why we have small
Right,
lifespans.
yeah.
We think in terms of seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks. We don't think in terms of infinity. Your average person doesn't sit at their desk and think in terms of infinity. They think in terms of, I wish it was 1 o'clock. Lunchtime.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I had a friend years ago and we always used to talk about a strange conversation for kids to have, but we were strange kids. And we used to talk about, well, we weren't actually, we were awake. That's what we were. And we used to talk about whoever died first would come back and tell the other one what it was like. Now, coincidentally, we obviously knew
That it was going to happen. Yeah.
that it was going to happen. And it was my friend who died at 20. I was only 18 when she died. But I was with her when she died. Anyway, it was 10 months later. And I was still living in my parents' house, but it was in the middle of the night, morning, if you want to say. And I was sitting up in bed reading a comic book. The Dandy, actually. And I was just about to put it down. I had a lamp at the side of my bed and a clock. And I turned off the light and turned to, I don't know what I was doing. I turned anyway, and she was sitting at the end of my bed. And she looked exactly as she always did, except that there was a light around her. Not around her, coming from her.
Yeah.
Emanating from.
And she said a couple of things to me anyway, but one of the things she said to me was, and this, I'm telling you this because it relates to time.
Yeah.
And one of the things she said to me was, I asked her, why did you take so long to come back? Because I said, you're dead 10 months. And she laughed. And she said to me, to you, it's 10 months. To me, it's nothing. Because there is no time here.
Yeah.
And these are her exact words. So what I'm going to say to you now actually comes across dimensions.
Yes.
These
So
are the
pay
exact
attention, everybody.
words from somebody that came
Across the divide.
across the divide. Or the veil, if you like. I said to her, I thought you were, why did you leave it so long? I said, you're dead 10 months. And she said, no, to you it's 10 months. To me it's nothing. She said, there is no time here. She said, a second a minute, an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year. It's all the same. There is no time here. She said a couple of other things as well, but so when you raise your consciousness beyond the duality, if you like, beyond the good and the bad of it, and you stop thinking in terms of, or you start thinking maybe rather than stop thinking, if you start thinking about what is time, and why am I counting cycles of the earth going around the sun, but like, why are we counting it?
Yeah.
What is the point in doing that?
Yes.
And realize that what you have is an eternal now. This is the teaching of Ascension. The duality is the fall in consciousness. Rising above the duality and realizing that you are eternal, that you are the perceiver, you are the thinker of the thoughts, you are the creator of the reality, and you have a choice. You have a choice. You don't have to perceive things one way or another unless you choose.
Yeah.
So the idea of creating time and creating language is not a negative thing, if you like. It was to facilitate the fall in consciousness and to kind of hold it safely, if you like, until we started to wake up again. You know? So you can look at it one way or another. You can look at it in, because I've had people who've said, you know, that the creation of language really destroyed knowledge, you know, but it didn't. It preserved it, because everything would have been lost.
Yeah.
Whereas with the creation of language, some of it was lost. Well, it was never lost, actually, you know. But to rely on memory while consciousness was falling wouldn't have been a good thing.
Yeah. Well,
You know?
and the thing is, it also created the kind of like divide, which is some people could read and a lot of people couldn't.
Yeah.
In the past.
Yeah. Well, that's what fallen consciousness was. I mean, we were going into that experience, and those.
Well, everybody would have known nothing.
Well, of course, but the masters, let's say, you know, of the mystery schools would have known that this was happening.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So they provided for, you know, they made allowances. They left things for us to wake us up when the time was right.
Yeah.
And of course, part of that is all the ancient structures all over the world.
I was just going to say, how does this relate to Atlantis as well? Because that would have been part of the falling of consciousness.
Yeah.
Because that was a higher consciousness, right? So.
Well, I mean, the whole story of Atlantis is a metaphor for fallen
for
consciousness.
this exact thing.
Yeah, a flood like water is always compared to consciousness, you know.
Well, and water is information too.
It's always compared to consciousness. Water is interdimensional.
Yeah.
But in the mystery schools, the only substance that there is to create with is thought.
Thoth.
There is nothing else. When I was very young, I remember realising one day coming home from school, and it was like, it stopped me in my tracks, was that every single thing in the man-made world had to start as an idea in somebody's mind.
That's it.
And that led me on to know that everything in the natural world started as an idea in someone's mind as well. So, but whose?
Yeah.
The creator, you know. And who's the creator? The perceiver. You know. You're the perceiver.
That's it.
Yes, because you're creating everything that you see.
It's a feedback loop.
Well, and if everybody's creating their own reality, which they are.
Absolutely.
Then you can perceive anything the way you want to perceive.
And by the
it.
way, you can ascend while everybody around you's going mental.
Yeah.
That's right.
It doesn't take everybody to do it at the same time.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Okay? That just to clear that point up, you can actually be an ascended being on a planet that's totally dense. You know? Because part of the mastery, if you want to put it that way, is to navigate and is to be able...
Yeah, I was going to say, how is the navigator included in this?
Yeah, so part of that mastery is to be able to navigate the things that the duality presents to you.
Yeah.
You know? And you've got a choice in that. You can either descend into the duality, or you can remember that it's not good or bad, it just is what it is.
Yeah. It's neutral.
Be the observer.
Yes.
Be the observer. Because something can only affect you if you let it.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. And you know, if everybody, it's amazing, because if everybody in the world, or at least a large percentage of the people in the world,
Yeah, you only need like 144,000.
could
say.
all, yeah, could know they are eternal, they are immortal, there is no such thing as death, the universe is their playground, they are the creator of their own experience,
Exactly.
and they will go on and on and on to create more incredible and amazing experiences. And the only limits there are those that they place on themselves.
That's it.
If everybody could just realise that simple thing, the whole of the consciousness of Earth and every being on it would shift, and the Earth itself would shift.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very simple. It just everything takes your compliance. Everything takes you to consent to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really simple. All you have to do is say, no,
That's it. Not for me.
it's not for me. It's as simple as that. It doesn't. You don't have to have a battle about it. You don't have to label it good or bad. You have a choice. You have a choice in everything you perceive and everything you feel. You know. So when consciousness kind of begins to wake up again, it starts to understand the information then in the higher way. Let's say, in terms of the bigger picture. So
Yeah.
we said that the structures were left all over the world, all the ancient structures all over the world. So the higher consciousness will start to read the language, that language. So that's the feminine aspect of us.
Mm-hmm.
Because the feminine aspect of us understands beyond the language, the written language.
Yeah.
It understands beyond time. Our feminine understands eternity. It understands infinity.
Mm-hmm.
It understands and remembers everything. Everything. It doesn't need anything to be written down. But it understands in a different way to the male energy.
And to clarify, the male and female energy would be... Female energy would be like your subconscious, right? And your male energy is your active,
Yeah.
perceiving
Consciousness
consciousness in the
Yeah.
now.
Yes.
Yes.
Exactly. And that's a very good point, Charlotte, because it's in the now that you want to marry your male and your female.
Mm-hmm.
In the now.
Mm-hmm.
Not tomorrow or yesterday.
Yes.
In
Right
the now.
now.
Not in 5 minutes.
Right here.
Right now.
Right
So-
now.
In order to bring yourself, yes, because, as you said, it's your male, and it is the male of us that fell.
Yes,
When
the
we
fall
talk
of
about
man.
the fall of man,
Mhm.
we call it the fall of man because it was our male energy that fell.
Yes.
It
The
wasn't
active-
the female energy. Yeah.
Mhm.
And we spoke about this in another podcast. Your male energy is the energy that you're in the minute you open your eyes.
That's right.
It's who you think you are, you know. It's like, okay, we all say my name is such and such, this is where I live, this is the job I do, this is the age I am, this is my family.
It's your
This
ego
it's all the
identity.
different labels that you
Yeah.
have on yourself as to who you are.
Yeah.
If you step out of that, if you strip yourself of all those labels, what are you? You're pure energy.
Mhm.
You're pure thought. You're not anybody's anything.
Yes.
You are a pure creator creating your own experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the interesting thing is that nobody can ever, even though we all live in what we think is the same world, nobody can compare. Nobody knows. You and me and Christine, and even though we're sitting in the same room, I have no idea if this room looks the same to you as it does to me.
That's right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Nor can we ever compare.
No.
Ever. So this could actually, all this could look totally different to you.
Yeah.
You could be seeing something, and most likely you are,
Oh no.
seeing something entirely different,
Yeah.
you know? And that's it, you can never compare. Even if you were to take a picture
Yes.
and show it to somebody and they go, yeah, that's what I'm saying, it doesn't matter, it's still not, they'll look at the picture and see something different.
Well, it's like people saying, "Is my red your red?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
Who
all
knows?
about your perception. Exactly.
People can commonly identify it, but you don't know if that's actually what they're seeing.
Yeah. And so the idea of the sites left all over the world in the pattern of geometry that we have talked about in previous podcasts,
Mm-hmm.
and the geometry left on the walls in terms of symbols, like the Triskelion you were
Yeah.
talking about, like a lot of the hieroglyphs would be considered they're all geometric,
Yeah.
underlying, have mathematical and geometric proportions.
Yeah.
You know? And even the sites themselves are all built. You see, the language of the higher self, the language of the feminine, the language of the creator is numbers
Mm-hmm.
and shape and form and geometry. And the reason it's sacred geometry, because in sacred geometry everything is equal.
Balanced.
Even when you're drawn with straight lines, for example, even when we draw, we go all the way through the series of the phases of the seed of life, the egg of life, the flower of life, the tree of life, the fruit of life, and then Metatron's cube.
Yeah.
Even when we're doing the straight lines aspect of that, all our platonic solids that we take out by connecting our circles with the straight lines, each line will be of equal length.
Yes.
Each face will be of equal size. That's why it's sacred, because everything is equal.
Proportional.
Yeah, that's why the circle with a dot in the center was used as the symbol for the creator or source energy. It was also a symbol for the mystery schools, because on a circle, everything is equal. Everything was equidistant from the circumference to the dot in the center.
Yeah.
Everything has equal access to the dot in the center. There's nothing higher or lower on a circle. Everything is equal, and there's no beginning or end.
Yes.
You don't know where the circle begins or ends. But the minute you break that circle
Into a line.
and bring it out into a straight line, now what have you done? You've unfolded infinity.
That's right.
And that's what we do when we create time.
Yes, I was just about to say.
But it's all a mental concept, you see. So if you think of the image of having a circle, breaking it and breaking it out into a straight line. On a circle, there's no beginning and end. Every point on a circle is a beginning and end. And a circle is self-contained. It's a self-contained unit. So it's a symbol of the creator energy. But the minute you break that and bring it out into a straight line, now it has a beginning, it has a middle, and it has an end.
Yeah.
And if you can consider, that's what we did to create time. We took ourselves from unity, which is the circle, and we unfolded ourselves into a straight line.
Yeah.
To create time. So that what it seemed was that things were happening, and it had a beginning and it had a middle and things happened one after another in a sequence of events.
Well, that it was linear, like a line.
That's exactly.
Well, that's the
linear,
male consciousness.
linear
Timeline.
space.
It created the
Yeah.
line because it's all it could see.
Exactly. And that's how the geometry is important, because all this information is
Preserved.
communicated to your feminine energy, to your very DNA, while you're working with the geometry.
Well, yeah.
It's activating those higher informational packages or codes, if you like, in the DNA. And not that your feminine energy needs activating, it doesn't, because it remembers all of that. It's activating the masculine energy.
Yeah, to be equal to the feminine.
Yeah. And as you mentioned, in the now. Because when you can stop thinking in terms of tomorrow, yesterday, and you just focus on now, everything that you're doing right now. And say, for example, you're washing your dishes. Then be washing your dishes. Be completely 100% focused on washing your dishes. Don't be washing your dishes and thinking about what you did yesterday, or washing your dishes and thinking about what you're going to make for your food. No, focus completely on washing your dishes. And when you're making your dinner, focus completely on making your dinner. When you're reading, focus completely on reading. In other words, always be present.
Yeah, exactly.
Be present.
Which is a very Buddhist thing.
The reason for that is that when you be present, you can expand the now.
Yeah.
And when you start to expand the now, it becomes an infinite now. And you stop thinking in terms of time. You stop thinking in terms of next week and next year and next month. And this is all part of the information that's encoded in the geometry and in the patterns that are created, because it's the feminine. We understand, the feminine aspect of us understands that. So, for example, we walk into a sacred site. We don't think it's having any effect on us, but our feminine energy has
felt it.
Well, it's
knows
constantly on. Like
it knows it. It's all fractals.
Yes.
So,
perceiving
the whole of the blueprint used to create the physical manifest universe is contained within each sacred site.
Yes.
And also within the whole network of sacred sites. And when we enter into a sacred site, we resonate with it, whether our male energy knows it or not. But the feminine energy does.
Yes.
But it's obviously better if you're working and you know what you're doing. So, I think we'll wrap it up there, will we?
I think so.
Because I'm just thinking that even though there's no time,
That's enough time.
No, I just, because, I talk a lot about Egypt and Ireland and that, and I just actually wanted to do this podcast to kind of bring in more about
The now.
yeah, and the actual teaching of Ascension, because everything I've spoke about in this podcast is the teaching of Ascension
Yes.
as preserved in the mystery schools.
Yeah.
Well,
And that means the
and
mystery
as-
schools all over the world in
all
the
over the
sacred
world.
sites.
Well,
all
yeah,
over
it
the
breaks
world.
away from having it being set in one place.
Universal
It's holographic.
information. Yeah.
Yes.
It's left holographically, fractally, if you like.
Yeah.
So all the information is contained in every single site, but it's all contained in all the sites as well.
Yeah.
And the whole blueprint of the pattern of all the sites all around the world contains all the information as well.
Yeah.
So it's all holographic, like Russian dolls, one within the other, if you know
That's
what I
it.
mean.
Yeah.
And so,
Like dimensions.
yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I just wanted to, because I think now is a
Now.
really good time, yeah, for people to start waking up to this.
Yes.
To start realizing the power of themselves.
Yeah.
To start realizing the power of their own ability to choose what they perceive and not perceive,
Yes.
because that is Ascension. Everything we've talked about today are the processes of Ascension.
Yeah. You're the person whose thoughts create your reality. You're the person who navigates the reality that you create.
Mm-hmm. But you have to see, in order to ascend beyond the duality, you've got to recognize the duality first.
Exactly. Yeah.
If you don't recognize your inner duality,
Yes.
or what the duality is, then you're not going to be able to
rise above it.
it.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons for this podcast today, because
Yeah.
people talk about duality and polarity, but maybe not always necessarily understand what that is.
Yeah.
And time, time is another thing that people don't realize. If you're constantly thinking in terms of minutes, seconds, days, weeks, months, years, counting time, then
It's affecting you.
you're degrading your own experience.
Yeah.
You're telling yourself you only have X amount of years here,
Yes.
and you're counting down the time. That's effectively what it is,
Yeah.
And then you just said that you're counting down.
Yeah,
That's
of
the
course.
lower energy. You're
Yeah.
counting down the
Yeah,
time.
till you die.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's, of course, the whole idea that plays into the duality thing,
And the fear of the unknown, right?
and the fear of the unknown. And that's another huge thing that we're all being presented with as well.
Well, there's a huge
is the fear of death.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, the manipulation, the best tool that has always been used. I know I said I was going to stop there, but I just want to say this. The tool that has always been used to manipulate is the fear of death.
Yes.
That's why in the mystery schools, the training for the initiate was always about death.
Confronting the fear of death. Yeah.
Because death will always be the tool that's going to be used to manipulate you.
Yeah.
The fear of your own death, the fear of the death of your children, your
Yes.
loved ones, it's always going to be the tool. Fear and manipulation are the tools of the duality.
That's right.
And the fear that everybody has is the fear of death. Now, what if, and I remember saying this as a child and I was laughed at, but what if you didn't believe in death? Because I said that as a child at one point. I don't believe in death. Somebody said something to me and I said, well, I don't believe in death. And they thought it was very funny. But I was telling
Serious.
them. I'm telling
Yeah.
you, you know what I mean? I don't actually subscribe to that concept. Do you know what I mean? So, what if you said, well, I'm not afraid of death because there is no death. Then all those manipulation tactics wouldn't work, would they?
No.
If you knew you were eternal,
You're unlimited.
immortal, and that it was your thoughts creating it and you had a choice, then the picture would change very rapidly. That's why the information preserved in the mystery schools always has been extremely important. That's why it's still there. It's interdimensional. It exists beyond linear time
Yeah.
and,
But
space,
in 3D.
because it's those who exist beyond linear time and space
Exactly,
that created
exactly. Yeah,
that
exactly.
created it and that continually feed it into this experience.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a tesseract, right?
Yeah, it's your higher self.
What's
that's
how you condense it every time.
Yeah.
It'd be a line. It's a square. It's a cube.
Yeah,
And then it goes on.
exactly.
And you don't
exactly.
have to,
Yeah, exactly.
It's dynamic. It's not static.
it's how you perceive it and what dimension of reality you're in.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a feedback.
Yeah. Feedback loop.
So the more refined and evolved, let's say, that your consciousness gets, then the more refined and evolved the thoughts that you have get, therefore the more refined and evolved of a reality you have. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
then therefore the more refined and evolved experience you have, which creates you to have more refined and evolved thoughts, which means you have more. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's
Infinite.
it's infinite. It's a feedback loop. And you are the thinker.
That's it. You.
The
are
universe
thinker.
is your playground.
That's it.
You know, and there is no such thing as death. So I think on that note,
Yes.
we'll end.
Yes, on that eternal happy note.
Yeah.
On that eternal note. Okay,
You're
so
grand. You're
I thank you
fine.
all for listening, and
Yes.
hopefully that you found something that'll help, and that might resonate with you. I hope so. That's the intention behind this podcast, anyway. So I give you my love, and hope
Yes.
that everybody is doing well and fine and happy.
Yes, I was
Yes.
just going to say, we are sending you love right now.
We're sending you
They're
love.
sending
We
you
love you.
Yeah, we do, and we love us too.
Yeah, we love you.
It's a
and
mutual
us.
admiration society.
Yeah, that's it.
It's eternal.
It's
It's
eternal.
eternal.
It's
eternal.
resonating everywhere.
Yeah. So goodbye from me.
Goodbye.
We sound like the two Ronnies.
I know.
Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me, Christine.
And goodbye from me 3, Charlotte.
Okay. Bye and thank you.
Bye and thank you.